So I've chosen this subject because it's something that I suppose the medical profession is rather divided about. We're going to be talking about male menopause or andropause. And many people have argued, obviously we see the menopause in women when you reach a certain age and your reproductive capacity declines. And when you reach a certain age in men, your testosterone starts to drop. And there are lots of examples of people giving interviews. I remember Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen doing one, talking about how the andropause had affected him. He claims he's struggled to cope with middle age. He also says since he has gone on testosterone supplements, he's a changed man. It's brought back, I dare to say, his juiciness. His words, not mine. Also, Robbie Williams also believes the menopause is a real condition and it needs treating. And there is a train of thought in medicine that they believe that those men who are suffering from low testosterone, low libido, and I'll ask our guest to explain that a little more in just a second, should be put on supplements, including testosterone treatment. So the question is, does andropause really exist? If it does exist, how many people are affected by it? And if they are affected, what do you do about it? Well, joining me now is Dr Nathan Spence, who's a medical doctor and advisor for health and him. Good morning.
Morning, David.
Shall we start at the beginning and let's talk about andropause? I have friends who work in anti-aging medicine. They are absolutely sure that andropause exists, and for those men who suffer, it is worth giving them supplements, whether it's, and we can talk about all of the things you can give, like with DHEA, for example, testosterone. You know far more than me on this. Let's start right at the beginning, though. Can you just talk us through what is meant by andropause?
Absolutely. So it's a term that is becoming more and more prevalent, which is good. And so look at it first in terms of the menopause women experience. So that's a drop in hormones as they age. Now, we know that in men, it's much less sudden. In women, it tends to happen sort of very, very quickly over a few years. So men's testosterone levels start to drop from around the age of 20 or 30. So they drop around 2 to 3% of testosterone per year. So by the time they get to the age of 50, they've dropped around half the available testosterone they had when they were younger. And we know that that is, well, we're starting to realise that's more going to be responsible for some symptoms that people had previously just put down to old age, getting older, midlife crisis.
Right. So given that people are dropping in testosterone, where is the conflict here? Because from what you're saying, this happens to every single man. It's part of the normal aging process. But there's a body of scientists and very eminent doctors saying it's nonsense. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I think that we need to look 30, 40 years ago, when women would talk about the menopause and symptoms they experienced of the menopause, they often were sort of shunned. They were told it's nothing to do with your hormones, it's just aging, it's just you're just being dramatic or whatever. And I think we're seeing a similar thing now, that actually, when it was previously thought that testosterone levels probably weren't that relevant to the symptoms that men were experiencing, and they were just put down to grumbles, actually there's a growing body of evidence, both anecdotal and research-based, that says actually maybe there is more of a link here. We should take it a bit more seriously.
It's interesting when you know, there are high-profile people, and I know many people who've actually sought help for this. So Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen said he went to see a doctor in December 2022. He couldn't cope, and these are the typical symptoms: low mood and a lack of libido, I believe. Robbie Williams also said the thinning of the hair, the lack of libido. He also sought help because he had a lower sex drive. Also, we've got Sean Ryder saying that his symptoms were so profound he felt he couldn't actually speak, was then put on testosterone and feels that he can actually perform much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And to quote Lawrence's juiciness, I think that's quite a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I
really
do.
So some of the research that we've been looking at, so surveying 1,000 or so men in London, 4 out of 5 have had a symptom of what we'd call the andropause, or the male menopause. So strikingly, around 50% have problems in the bedroom, they have intimacy problems, their libido's dropped, 2/3 have no energy, they find they can't do what they're meant to be doing, their work suffers, their home life suffers. Really serious things, actually, and it's interesting that it's all coming out now with sort of Robbie and Lawrence and other famous people. And actually, these symptoms need talked about because they really do affect the home life, they affect relationships, they affect the economy. And actually, more of a focus on it could improve our general health in or sort of a population level?
I was just reading from consultant Channa Jayasena, who's a consultant in reproductive endocrinology, who basically says, oh, this is absolute nonsense. The problems start because men are Googling things that go wrong in middle age, like weight gain around your belly, your man boobs. But obviously, you know, these men may be imbibing rather too much with alcohol, memory loss and so on. Is it sexist? Have we got a group of women now who just don't believe that menopause exists?
Well, look, I think it's important to say that as people age, they do experience these things as well. And each individual will have a different sort of overall main cause for that. And the effect to which testosterone has in the individual will vary. Some men will have a slower drop, some men will have a faster drop, and some men will be more sensitive to that drop, certainly. But writing it off completely as rubbish is, I think, unhelpful, because actually there are probably a significant number of men who may benefit from this. And, you know, that conversation needs to be had with their general practitioner, their GP, and the question really would be, well, if it might help, then why don't we investigate it more?
So that's a really good point. So the NHS website, and people can look this up, just talks about the common symptoms of mood swings, irritability, a loss of muscle mass. Of course, if you have less testosterone, you can't build that muscle. Fat redistribution, a general lack of enthusiasm or energy, poor sleeping, increased tiredness. I think this sounds like most men of a certain age, poor concentration and poor short-term memory. Now, if you are suffering, so what do you do about that? Because A, it's really difficult to get a GP appointment. If you went as a man, it's very difficult to get men to go to see the GP in the first place. But if the man does go to the GP, will the GP think you're wasting their time, do you think?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for each individual, but I'd like to think not. I think the important thing initially is to talk about it. And actually, in your social group, men down the pub should be talking about this sort of thing, sharing their thoughts and sharing their symptoms, and actually realising that they're not alone. And this is a very common thing that people experience. And I'd like to think if someone came to their GP and said that actually should be taken seriously. Not once because actually it can be a symptom of very serious underlying things, that actually this whole process of natural aging and feeling fatigued, tired all the time needs looked at. It's not normal. People often assume that's just a normal thing that you get when you get older. It's really not. You see a lot of older people who are full of energy and full of spark.
So I was just going to say, just in terms of your clinical practice, and obviously you're an advisor for health and him, what if someone comes with the symptoms like that, do you do baseline bloods? What do you do next?
I think you take a full history, you'd examine them, and I think baseline blood tests are very, very useful. I don't think you need to immediately jump into a full hormonal panel. That'll be a secondary test, but it should be on the list of things that could be wrong. It shouldn't be immediately dismissed just because of previous mantras saying that it wasn't relevant. Actually, it could be relevant and it should be investigated.
Right. And then, for those men who are deemed suitable and fit for treatment, what's available?
So we know that there are various complementary therapies that need to be considered for these symptoms, and it will really depend on what the problem, the symptom the individual patient is suffering with. So if it is more fatigue, mental health things, cognitive behavioural therapy, talking therapies. If it's libido, is there some sort of tablet or therapy we can give them to help with their libido in the bedroom problems? If there's testosterone deficiency, then there should be discussions with testosterone replacement. They can be topical, they can be tablets.
And so testosterone, what about the role of hormones higher up in the chain? So, and without getting too technical, things like DHEA.
So I think that's when that's when the general practitioner would need to be referring to an endocrinologist. Yeah. Those things could be relevant, but they're all, as you say, based on quite technical blood tests that need to be done.
And so just for those people who are listening, or maybe, and this is how we often see referrals of men, it's normally the partners who say, hang on a minute, dig in the ribs, and off you go to see the GP. What would be your advice generally?
I think my advice generally would be just go and talk about it. Don't put these things down to just wear and tear to age. Make that appointment today. Take your wife with you. Take your partner with you. Go to the GP. Have that conversation. Yeah. And that's the first step on a journey that could take you to feeling a lot better.
Super. Really good to talk to you, Nathan. Thanks for your time. Dr Nathan Spence, their medical doctor and advisor for health and him. I've had some very droll replies. I don't know if I can read this one, but I will. Simon in Devon, lower testosterone does exist as you get older. Before choosing medication, try changing your partner, and bingo. Thanks very much. Very droll indeed.